Your nightmare had a nightmare, and it was the Tyranids. Imagine every single alien invasion movie you've ever seen. Independence Day, Alien, Starship Troopers. Now imagine all of those aliens got together, had a terrible baby, and that baby was hungry. Congratulations, you've just imagined the Tyranids, and they're here to eat your face, and your planet, and your sun, probably. Welcome to the most terrifying faction in Warhammer 40k, where the galaxy's worst case scenario isn't nuclear war or robot uprisings, it's being digested by a space bug the size of a building. Today we're diving deep into the Tyranid swarm, and I promise you'll never look at your garden insects the same way again. The Tyranids are essentially the galaxy's worst buffet customers. They're an extragalactic alien race that exists for one purpose and one purpose only: to consume all biological matter in the universe. And when I say all, I mean all. Planets, people, plants, your dog, everything. They're not here to negotiate, they're not here to trade, they're not even here to conquer. They're here to turn everything into more Tyranids. Think of them as the ultimate recycling program, except instead of saving the environment, they're destroying literally everything. They travel through space in massive hive fleets that can blot out the stars, and each fleet contains billions upon billions of creatures, from tiny ripper swarms that can strip a human to bones in seconds, to biotitans the size of skyscrapers that make Godzilla look like a gecko. Here's the really fun part. The Tyranids aren't individual creatures making individual choices. They're all controlled by a single entity called the Hive Mind. It's like if every ant on Earth shared one brain, except this brain is psychic, spans entire galaxies, and wants to eat you. Every single Tyranid organism, from the smallest to the largest, is basically just a puppet being controlled by this incomprehensible alien intelligence. The Hive Mind is what makes Tyranids truly horrifying. It's not just smart, it's terrifyingly smart. It can coordinate attacks across entire star systems, adapt to any threat almost instantly, and it never, ever stops learning. Fought Tyranids before and won? Congratulations, you just taught them how to kill you better next time. The Hive Mind communicates through something called the Shadow in the Warp, which is basically psychic interference so powerful that it blocks out all other psychic communication. Imagine trying to use your phone, but someone's blasting white noise so loud you can't hear anything. For species that rely on psychic powers, like the Eldar or human psychers, the arrival of a Tyranid fleet is like going suddenly deaf and blind. It's psychological warfare on a cosmic scale. Let's talk about the actual creatures, because the Tyranids have a monster for every occasion. At the bottom of the food chain, you've got termagants and hormagaunts, which are basically your standard infantry. They're roughly human-sized, come in swarms of hundreds, and they exist to overwhelm you with pure numbers. Think zombie apocalypse, but the zombies are intelligent and coordinated. Then you've got Genestealers, which are exactly what they sound like, and somehow worse. These things infiltrate human societies, start cults, and literally breed with humans to create hybrid generations that serve the Hive Mind. They're playing the long game, setting up invasions decades before the main fleet arrives. It's espionage, horror, and biological warfare all in one disgusting package. Moving up the nightmare ladder, we have warriors, which are the officer class. These things stand 8 feet tall, have 4 arms, can be equipped with all sorts of biological weapons, and coordinate the smaller organisms. They're smart, tough, and absolutely lethal in combat. And then we get to the really big boys. Carnifexes are living battering rams, basically T-Rexes on steroids with extra limbs and built-in cannons. Hive tyrants are the commanders of the swarm, towering monsters that can sometimes fly, cast psychic powers, and kill space marines like they're swatting flies. And at the absolute top, biotitans like Hierophants and Harridan. Creatures so massive you may as well go and cry in the corner if you see one. Don't get me started on things like the Norn Queen or the Lictors. Those give me real nightmares. Every single one of these creatures is a custom-built biological weapon. The Tyranids don't use technology, they are technology. Need anti-aircraft? They'll grow flying creatures with acid spit. Need bunker busters? They'll evolve organisms with seismic cannons. Need to break through armour? They'll create claws that can rip through tank plating. They're the ultimate adaptive force. The Tyranid invasion strategy is actually brilliant in its simplicity. First, they send in the infiltrators, Genestealers and lictors, to scout and sabotage. These create cults, sow discord, and generally soften up the target. Then the shadow and the warp arrives, cutting off psychic communication and causing terror. Next comes the main fleet, and this is where things get apocalyptic. Billions of spores rain down from orbit, each one containing organisms ready to fight. The Tyranids establish beachheads and start the consumption process. They don't just kill the defenders, they harvest them. Every fallen enemy becomes biomass that's broken down and reformed into more Tyranids. Once they've achieved air superiority and eliminated any major resistance on the planet, they deploy capillary towers. These massive organic structures are basically giant straws that suck up all the biological matter from the planet. Oceans, forests, people, everything. The biomass gets slurped back up to the hive ships in orbit, where it's processed and turned into more organisms. The final stage? The planet is left as a lifeless rock, stripped of its atmosphere, its water, everything. The Tyranids move on to the next world, the fleet now bigger than when it arrived, because it's converted an entire planet's worth of biomass into more Tyranids. It's the most efficient invasion strategy ever conceived, and it's utterly unstoppable. Here's where it gets wild. Nobody knows. The Tyranids came from outside the galaxy, from the void between galaxies, and they only showed up relatively recently in the 40k timeline. The first confirmed contact was in 745.M41 with the invasion of the world of Tyran, hence the name Tyranids, but they'd probably been infiltrating for centuries before that through Genestealer cults. Since then, multiple massive hive fleets have invaded the galaxy. Hive Fleet Behemoth hit the eastern fringe and was stopped at great cost. Hive Fleet Kraken came next, splitting into multiple tendril fleets. Hive Fleet Leviathan is the largest yet, attacking from below the galactic plane. And here's the crazy part. These fleets are just the vanguard. The main swarm might still be coming, and it could be millions of times larger. The Tyranids are essentially fleeing from something even worse, or they're just the galaxy's worst houseguests, consuming everything in their path as they cross the universe. Either way, the implications are terrifying. Because the Tyranids represent an existential threat that unites all the other factions in fear, the Imperium sees them as a galaxy-ending threat. The Eldar know they can't negotiate with them. Even the Orcs, who love a good fight, are unnerved by an enemy that doesn't leave anything behind to loot. The Necrons are worried because the Tyranids are eating their potential bodies for resurrection. Everyone's terrified, and for good reason. They're also a perfect example of grimdark horror done right. They're not evil in the traditional sense. They're a force of nature, an unstoppable tide of hunger that doesn't hate you or love you. You're just food. That's somehow more terrifying than any cackling villain. Here's the really nasty part. Every conventional strategy fails against Tyranids. You can't outproduce them because they turn your losses into their gains. You can't negotiate because there's nothing to negotiate with. You can't nuke them from orbit because you're just creating radioactive Tyranids. Even winning battles is a temporary solution because the Hive Mind learns from every defeat. The only semi-successful strategy has been to destroy hive ships in space before they can land, or to deny them biomass by using scorched earth tactics. The Imperium has literally virus-bombed their own worlds to deny Tyranids the biomass. When genocide of your own people is your best defensive option, you know you're facing something truly apocalyptic. Pretty much, yeah. The Tyranids embody the inevitability of extinction in Warhammer 40k. They're the reminder that the galaxy is fundamentally hostile and uncaring. But that's what makes them such great storytelling. They're the ultimate underdog maker. Any victory against them feels earned because you know you're fighting against impossible odds. They're also just cool as hell from a hobby perspective. You can build and paint swarms of aliens in any colour scheme you want because different hive fleets have different adaptations. Want purple and orange bugs? Go for it. Want to make yours based on deep sea creatures? Do it. The Tyranids are a canvas for creativity. So there you have it, the Tyranids in all their terrifying glory. They're hungry, they're coming, and they won't stop until they've eaten everything. Sweet dreams! If you enjoyed learning about the galaxy's most nightmare-inducing faction, smash that like button and subscribe for more Warhammer 40k content. Drop a comment telling me which faction you want to see next, or share your most horrifying Tyranid encounter from the lore or tabletop. And remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And also giant space bugs that want to eat your face. Stay safe out there and keep your biomass to yourself.